Today we're talking about exploratory data analysis, and one of the questions that we got recently was, at what point does exploratory data analysis become a waste of time? When is it good enough? So in today's video, we want to answer that question, but before we get to that, Chris, let's do a quick review of what exploratory data analysis is.
Is a good starting place. Exploratory data analysis is it's a large set of processes that you do to try to figure out what's in your data, right? We'll be talking about this at the Marketing AI conference and stuff, but I think the most salient quote comes from our friends at IBM. The main purpose of exploratory data analysis is to look at data before making any assumptions, right? It's a process used by data scientists to analyze and investigate data sets, summarize their characteristics, employ data visualization. All that stuff is true. But the big purpose is look at data before making any assumptions. And so when we think about data, particularly in the context of marketing, think about your Google Analytics data. Have you ever noticed someone who's maybe not a data scientist or a strong data analyst look at data in Google Analytics and just leap to totally unfounded conclusions?
And so, Chris, I know that we have a process, so I'm just going to bring it up real quick. So this is the exploratory data analysis process from start to finish. And so, when you say looking at what's in your data, you're not saying that the exploratory data analysis process is meant to do the data analysis. It's to understand, is this data the right data to be looking at in order to answer the question being asked? Is that correct?
Yes. Think of it like this. Data is an ingredient. Mm-hmm. Data is an ingredient. You're going to cook something. You've got to know, do you have the ingredients? Are they in good shape? Do you know what they are, and things like that? So the process begins at that goal and strategy. If we were cooking, it would be, this is what I want to cook. I want to cook steak, right? And then you go into your refrigerator and you're like, hey, look, it's filled with fish. Like, well, I guess you're not cooking steak then, right? And so that first part, what's the goal? What's the strategy? What are you trying to do with this ingredient, this data? Mm-hmm. And then you get the data, which is the second step. The third step is attribute classification, which is just trying to figure out what's in your data. What are the dimensions, which are the non-numeric things? What are the metrics, which are the numeric things? What are the different types? And you do your initial analysis, univariate, multivariate, data quality checks, anomaly detection. If you think about this again in terms of cooking and ingredients, you've got your recipe, you know what the target outcome is. Maybe you want to make steak. Now you look in your fridge and you got steak in there, okay? How old is it? What's the expiration date, right? If you want to make filet mignon and all you've got is ribeye, you ain't making filet mignon, right? Now, if you've got a tenderloin, you can make filet mignon because the tenderloin's part of the filet mignon's part of the tenderloin. You got to chop it up, right? What's the correct width to make a filet mignon, right? You don't want to make it an inch thick because you're going to have a really bad time. What quality is it, right? Is it choice? Is it prime? Is it a Japanese Wagyu A5 marbling score 7? Like, what is that thing? That's the analysis you do. And then you do requirements verification. You said you wanted to make a great filet mignon. Of the steak that you looked in the fridge, does it meet those requirements? If it's 1 inch thick, it's 5 weeks old, and it's not being dry aged, then no, you can't do it. In which case, you have to go back to the beginning and say, from a goal and strategy perspective, okay, here's what we do have, right? Like, we have a refrigerator full of fish. I know you wanted steak, but we got a fridge full of fish. So can I interest you in some grilled fish instead? And again, with something like Google Analytics data, right? If you're trying to say, I want to do, say, multi-touch attribution analysis on my data, and you've done no UTM tagging, you have no attribution data in your data, right? You've looked at your dimensions, you looked at your metrics, you've done your data quality checks, you've checked for anomalies. 3/4 of your traffic's from spam bots, and you've got no UTM tags. From a requirements perspective, you can't do what you want to do. You can't create that multi-touch attribution, that you simply don't have the right ingredients for it. So that's the importance of EDA and why we're talking about it today.
So it sounds like you always have to start with what is the question being asked? And so you started to get into, when is it good enough or when is it a waste of time? Exploratory data analysis, at least from my perspective, is good enough when you've determined whether or not you can answer the question being asked with the set of data. It's a waste of time if you are not establishing the purpose at the beginning. So if you, Chris, as you started saying, like just open up Google Analytics and sort of see, what's in there. If you don't have a point, if you don't have a purpose, that's when it's a waste of time, because then you're just spinning your wheels and wasting resources and wasting money. It is good enough when you have a clear purpose and you can then use this process to determine, do the ingredients that I have in front of me, will it give me the end result that I'm looking for?
Exactly. Again, let's extend the cooking analogy even more. If you just bought, a picanha, right, which is a very specific cut of meat, and you got it at the store, you looked at it yesterday, right, and you're grilling it today, you don't have to do a whole lot of exploratory analysis on it, right? You know what quality it is. You looked at it yesterday. It's still fresh. And you know how to cut it and things like that. You're good. If you do one specific type of analysis over and over and over in your marketing, and you've got good governance and things, you know that the data set coming into your Google Analytics account is in good shape. So you don't have to do EDA every single time you run a report, because you're making the same recipe. The ingredients are still good, and you've got the processes in place to cook it. So you don't have to do it maybe more than like once a quarter, maybe once every 6 months, just to make sure that nobody accidentally changed something in Tag Manager or GA to mess up your data. You know when it's time to check when you start to see anomalies in the output. So for example, when we look at our multi-touch attribution, when we run it for ourselves and for our clients, one of the things we've seen from time to time, we'll see a source medium we don't recognize, like, that looks like a weird bit of junk in there. And we know it's that time. Maybe it's time to go back through our EDA and say, okay, and look at our governance as well and say, okay, we need to filter this stuff out. Like, this is junk email traffic. Let's filter that out of there, keep things clean. So the answer to the question about when it's important, when it's a waste of time, when it's good enough, depends on what you're cooking, right? If you make a different dish every single day of the week with different ingredients, you have to do EDA, which is the data equivalent of looking in the fridge every single time. Because you got to say, okay, well, today I'm making chicken noodle soup. Fridge is still full of fish. Weird. But that EDA process is important, because and tomorrow you're going to make pasta carbonara. Okay, cool. You now have to do that EDA. Do you have pasta? Do you have cream? Do you have all this stuff, right? Because you don't probably keep the entire contents of your fridge memorized in your head all the time. So you do that EDA from a cooking perspective every time you sit down to cook a new recipe. Now, if you're going to cook chicken noodle soup 7 nights a week this week, right? If for some strange reason, I don't know why you wouldn't just make a big batch all at once. But say you're going to cook chicken noodle soup 7 nights a week this week, same exact recipe every night. The amount of EDA you have to do of looking in the fridge is very minimal, right? Because you just, carrots, celery, onions, chicken, and water and stuff. You will see your supplies diminish, but you know that it's pretty much the same thing. You don't have to inspect the chicken super carefully. I mean, you should just a little bit, just to make sure it's like not turning green by the end of the week. But the process is the same. The same is true for Google Analytics, for any kind of marketing data from your CRM. If you're just cooking one report at a time, like here's our conversions for our email marketing campaign. Once you've done that initial EDA and you've got good governance in place, you don't have to do it all that often. It's a waste of time to do it every single time when nothing much is going to change. On the other hand, if you are tasked with, here's 45 different reports that you might be asked for this week, and your crazy CEO is like, I want this one, and I want this one, and tell me about this. Well, you're going to have to do EDA every single time, because you don't know what's in the box. You don't know what you have in stock until it's time to sit down and make that report.
So it sounds like the bottom line, Chris, is, if you're doing consistent reporting with the same kinds of questions, the same kinds of data, you don't necessarily need to do exploratory data analysis every time. However, if the questions you're getting are varied, the data sets that you have at your disposal are inconsistent, then it's a good best practice to be doing more regular exploratory data analysis to ensure that the data that you're working with answers the question, and make sure that you are stating the question before going into exploratory data analysis so that there is a purpose, a hypothesis to your process.
And I'll leave you with this thought. The amount of exploratory data analysis you need to do is inversely proportional to the amount of governance you do. The less governance you have, the more EDA you have to do every time, because you don't know how clean or dirty your data is. The more governance you do and the more process you have to keep things clean, the less analysis you have to do, because you know pretty much what you have and what condition it's in.
And so, Chris, people who are interested in learning more about the exploratory data analysis process, they'll be able to catch you at MAICON 2022 this summer, right?
That's correct. I'll be doing a talk called Exploratory Data Analysis, the missing ingredient in marketing AI. So come on out to Cleveland in August for MAICON, and look forward to seeing you there.